Sustainability Association.
David?
Hey. Hey, what?
Hi, David.
Hi, we're trying to start the meeting.
Okay, you try.
Okay. Yeah, you know, I have a lot of trouble. Everybody enjoys each other's company too much. You know, we just all want to have a good time and visit.
David, would you go over the code of conduct first?
No.
Okay.
Thank you, David.
Just be nice. So our guest speakers tonight are going to be Robert Gibson with Palindrome, Alison Wick from Prosper, Portland, and Scott Baston, who's from Piedmont. He's an engineer of Piedmont. And I'll get the announcements out of the way, and then we can get on with the meeting. Neighbor to Neighbor is this Saturday at 8:15. We meet here for breakfast. And we don't know if we're going to be helping Betty. She's waited us on for the past few months, but we're at least going to swing by.
I told her that it's mandatory.
Right.
If nothing else, we need to inspect that bedroom.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll take some tools.
Yeah.
When is their system meeting?
July.
Oh, is it July?
Yeah, so we'll be in full panic mode for her in June to get that room ready.
Yeah.
So we have West Rock cleanups May 12th, 18th, and 25th at 9 a.m. And that's at 101st and Foster. And the VFW breakfast is May 19th at 9:30 a.m. at the American Legion Hall. And the Johnson Creek cleanup we're partnering with Community Connection Center in the church here, June 22nd at 9 a.m. We're cleaning up the southeast Flavel and Knapp. Well, yeah, Johnson Creek from southeast Flavel to Knapp. And Brian made it back just in time. He wanted to do a little announcement about Mother's Day coffee.
Hey,
Hi.
just a quick announcement that we're bringing in a mobile coffee cart Sunday morning for Mother's Day from in the lobby here, 9:30 to 12:30. It's free drinks for all moms, really all ladies.
There you go.
We're not carding anybody, you know, right? Like,
You have to be over 18.
I think the age thing,
Yeah, I
we have
don't
to
know.
do the age thing.
I have a hard time with that one.
you can be a teenage mother, doesn't matter. Anyways, it's coffee, espresso drinks are free for the ladies in the neighborhood. The men, like Cliff and I, have to buy our own, sorry. There'll be, of course, Mount Scott is doing their church service at about 10:30. And people are welcome to go to that, but the point is, you don't have to. You just come to the lobbies, get coffee. You can take it to go if you want. You can stay and chat if you want. And that's it, Mother's Day.
Okay, thank you. And so now we'll turn it over to Robert Gibson and Alison Wick.
She's got to get this thing up and
Get
running.
this up and running. Okay. Does anyone else have any announcements that they'd like to make?
I'd just like to thank everybody for their hard work today.
Well, we had a fun time on Renee's Alley today, cleaning out blackberries.
Notice Renee's half asleep.
Yeah.
I know.
I went home and had to have a couple of coffees to get myself wound up. It's either that or take a nap.
I took it.
I didn't do either. That's fine. Because he's got everything over there. He's got the laptop. Do we need to close that one? No, I closed it about as much as I could get it closed. It's okay. Are you talking about on our screen here? The glare?
We lost him. I think he's getting a laptop.
Yeah, I think he's getting a laptop. Order his office next to it. See if I know it was a setting off.
He's way too young for a senior moment.
Have back up.
Way.
Those shorts have a huge, oh, that's her now. She's five.
Lauren, too.
Just happened.
It's like Coca-Cola. And then she was,
Are you slow down?
and she,
Quite short anymore.
We're missing our remote. And unless one of our guys bought a different remote, and I'm not aware of, try to work on this, but I'm gonna get a different setup, because
It's pretty USB to that computer that's attached to the motor. So I'm assuming that's the hardware.
You want a agenda? Penny, it's on that.
Well, no, I'm at the Lents neighborhood cleanup, not the correct.
Oh, it's the same, it's one and the same.
Same time?
It's one and the same day,
Same day.
same day.
It's coincidental.
They wanted to get Johnson Creek cleaned up, so they did it the same day.
We got 9 dumpsters coming.
Well, I'm just, it's starting.
Oh, that would be cool if it just works even.
They'll have people up here. Yeah, they'll have people up here.
And then the.
Yeah, that would be really slick.
Me, if I had it as a PDF, I have it as a PowerPoint.
You think you can play that now?
I think maybe if I had it as a different file, I'd be able to, but it's not showing up there.
That looks promising.
Yeah, I know, I
I
got
wasn't planning it
excited.
that far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Putting your flash drive in the back of the TV.
Yeah, just shut on the TV and away you go. We're gonna have to do all this stuff that Brian's doing, yeah.
okay, how about this? Help me roll this one out of the hallway. I don't know, that's too hard.
They are.
Oh. Let's try number 2.
Yeah, and easel that, and easel, and
Sure, let's switch. Switch all.
chart paper.
So that's just gonna protect them on the wall.
Yeah, on a green wall rather than a white wall.
Well, that would be good for, yeah, good. I don't know, I can't remember, I'm afraid.
This one?
Yeah, and Renee, her Renee.
Okay.
Yeah, you know. It was all about,
Cindy, you made it.
I have a plate.
Oh, look at that.
I'm gonna try it if I ever get to it.
yeah, it was all about the.
Yeah, the garbage can, please.
Is that the USB connector?
USB-C. I might have another adapter. I will make this work somehow.
We can always do it the old fashioned way.
Let's talk through it.
Yeah.
Hello. Where's your husband?
He's supposed to come, I don't want to tell him. He's walking the dog.
Oh, he's walking the dog.
He got late start.
Hello.
Regular USB. You do this. Do this somehow.
flyers, a lot of Metro flyers, we went through that last week.
But is it right? Yeah, that is. So
They gave flyers, I think, little stacks of them.
Oh, that- oh, it- It's
Yeah,
not this
Sean
year
said
yet.
paint, there's one about paint, there's one about red.
You might have to go to his.
But I don't know if you picked any up. I did. Yeah, there's some over there. That's why I gave it to them.
Sweet, green beans. Yeah.
That's it?
Oh.
So
I think I make tomatoes and my zucchini and
When you do something.
it's serious.
I really don't like
Scary
putting
to see
tomatoes
that.
out to soil temperature. It's supposed to sit.
Right. Well, they're not gonna do any good.
She just doesn't
Yeah.
tolerate
And
it's on my behavior.
it looks like I yesterday, before I guess, I went out there.
Yeah.
It looks like it's water.
I was like,
Yeah,
don't be rude.
Close enough for going over.
Take it from mom.
You can buy a soil thermometer. And that tells you how warm your soil is and you want moisture. Because it's not starting to either it's dry or it's not dry.
Well, yeah.
It's such a super friendly, and then every now and then.
Phenomenal, Julie.
Some shit.
Yeah, those are.
Oh,
Oh, did I have one right there?
Well, does that work? So can you access it?
I don't know, let's see.
It all talks that way.
Had told me
Yeah.
that it seemed to him that they made it more left side.
So you're the donate.
Yeah, read it.
Yes. Which one is
We
under?
5-9.
5'9" and up.
Yeah. And they are doing.
All right.
Thank you.
Wow, it's really good.
I already had something for you.
Did you?
I made it. You raised beds.
Penny.
This morning.
Penny.
Wow.
Penny.
Ranging. She's hired.
Yeah.
I've got 76 degrees in my garden. Would be my tomatoes. Well, hell yes. Number one, you just had your dirt delivered. It's very hot. It's on the pile. And you put it in metal raised beds.
Okay. So,
Are we ready?
thank you for, yeah. I'm
Okay.
ready.
All right, we're ready.
So thank you for inviting Robert and I here tonight. My name is Alison Wick. I'm a project manager at Prosper Portland. I work mostly in the Lents urban renewal area, and my main project for the last couple months has been the Lents Town Center Phase 2 project. So I'll go through kind of some background of the Lents 5-year action plan, what Lents Town Center Phase 1 was, and then where we're at with Lents Town Center Phase 2, which is the property adjacent to the Waddles Boys and Girls Club. So if you'll be my maestro, and actually you can just click through, this is a little bit of an animated timeline. So just to kind of ground everyone in the work that Prosper Portland's done over the last 5 years, in May 2014, we adopted what's called the Lents 5-year action plan. It's looking at the last 5 years of the Lents urban renewal area. That fall, in fall 2014, we released what's called a request for proposals for development partners for Prosper Portland-owned properties in Lents Town Center, so the 92nd and Foster area. We selected 4 development partners at that time and moved forward with the projects that we call Lents Town Center Phase 1, and I'll go into a little more detail of what those were. Once Phase 1 was completed, we got our eyes focused on Phase 2 and entered into what's called a Memorandum of Understanding with Palindrome Communities for the Waddles Boys and Girls Club property and the adjacent property where Zoigle House Brewing is. And then this past fall and winter, we conducted some community outreach and public engagement specifically about that property and what the community wanted to see, what sort of community values, priorities, and ultimately public benefits they wanted to see come forward on the site. So we conducted 4 in-language focus groups, 2 kind of smaller community conversations, 1 web-based open house, and then 1 larger public open house. Most of those events were at the Waddles Boys and Girls Club. So where we're at right now is that our next step will be to bring a development agreement forward to the Prosper Portland Board for approval. And we're planning on doing that in June. And if our development agreement is approved, then Robert will move forward with design review. And that would be this summer with, and all goes well with that, construction could start as early as like winter, spring 2020.
So do we have any idea of what is going to be built yet?
We'll get there.
Okay.
Okay.
You're just trying to skip that.
I am.
Let's get to the important stuff.
Yeah.
If my,
Oh, I'm sorry.
Brian.
so, as I mentioned, our work is guided in the Lents urban renewal area by the Prosper Portland Strategic Plan and the Lents 5-Year Action Plan. The Lents 5-Year Action Plan was developed with another broad sweep of public engagement. So we did 4 large open houses in kind of the 2012, 2013 era, and had over 300 people participate at that time, and worked with the Portland Bureau of Transportation, Bureau of Environmental Services, Portland Housing Bureau to kind of come together with one plan for the neighborhood. On this slide, I would just kind of focus you on the blue area, so neighborhood centers and Lents Town Center. So that's the actions from the Lents 5-Year Action Plan that are guiding our work in the Lents Town Center area. Sorry, there's a lot of slides. So these green properties are, for the most part, were formerly Prosper Portland owned. Some of them were privately owned, so you remember the new Copper Penny and the Chevron Station. But those 5 projects, what we collectively call Phase 1, so the Asian Health and Service Center, Woody Guthrie, 5 Rose Community Development, Lents Common, which is owned by Prosper Portland, then Oliver Station East and West by Palindrome Communities. The blue property at the top is what we're calling Lents Town Center Phase 2. This is groundbreaking for one of our projects. And
Would you like to switch?
sure.
Yeah. You got it better than I can do that.
So yeah, these are the 4 projects that make up Phase 1. So now kind of on to, and this I think is pretty similar to the information that you guys have. So just kind of totaling all of the units. There were 263 units in Phase 1, and a good portion of them were some sort of income restricted housing, so either affordable at 30 or 60%, or what we're called workforce units. Those are all in the Woody Guthrie project at 80 to 100. And that's something that Prosper Portland Housing Bureau did really intentionally. We put affordable units in the first phase to ensure that they were built throughout this process. So this is the diagram that we've used throughout our public involvement for Lents Town Center Phase 2, kind of showing where we see housing, public space, and commercial space on the site. And this is the diagram that we use where we're talking about what would people want to see in the space, what are their priorities for the site. And we had those conversations in 4 in-language focus groups. So we worked with a program called the Community Engagement Liaisons out of the Office of Civic Life. And so we worked with a Spanish, a Vietnamese, a Chinese, and a Russian liaison who recruited a focus group of Russian-speaking, Spanish-speaking participants to make sure that we were involving minority communities, communities of color early on in this process. And so we met, in spaces kind of like this. We met where people were already gathering and provided meals, childcare, and gift certificates for people's participation. And then we also hosted 2 community conversations, which were really kind of focused more on Lents organizations. We had an online survey and an open house. So we also provided meals, childcare, and Spanish translation in those venues. And this is kind of a numerical summary of our public outreach. So we provided 232 meals, sent out over 4,000 postcards to invite people to the open house, 12 hours of childcare, and got, for us this is pretty good numbers of participation. And so with all the information and the values and priorities that we heard from those meetings, we're really distilling them down into what the public benefits for the project could look like. And the public benefits will sit in a legally binding document between Prosper Portland and Palindrome communities to make sure what the community wanted to see is eventually built on the site. So as a baseline, there will be both Prosper Portland and City of Portland policies embedded within the project. So no matter what the project was, these benefits would show up in the site. So this is our Prosper Portland business equity policy. So the actual construction for the site will show 20% minority or certified firms, so minority-owned, women-owned, or DBE firms. Prosper Portland workforce training equity policy, so looking at the labor hours, who's working on the site, and looking at certain numbers for women and minority workers. And then our green building policy, so for new construction, it's usually a LEED certification, and then Earth Advantage could be more for retrofitting projects. And then also the City of Portland's inclusionary housing policy will apply to the site. So this is kind of a summary. If you're at our open house, these are the same boards that you would have seen. And it's a summary of the values that we heard from the community around housing, and then how those could be reflected in the development. And so what we're currently talking with Palindrome about now is, we're definitely going to see inclusionary zoning on the site. So a certain percentage of the units will be affordable as designated by the City of Portland. And then we're looking at what we can do to have more 3-bedroom units on the site, especially those affordable units being 3-bedroom, to be able to accommodate more families. And then a portion of the property that we're calling Block F, which we'll see a little bit later, we're considering transferring to the Portland Housing Bureau, that they would take that out as a fully affordable project.
But how are the values around elderly and disabled figured into your housing project?
Yeah, so I think homes to support the most underserved members of our community is maybe where.
But is there a targeted towards, there's a lot of elderly individuals in this community that are eventually not going to be able to maintain their own homes.
Right.
There's not on our plan, there's not a specific like age restriction, like for senior housing, 55 and older or 62 and older. But in terms of accessibility for anyone who has changes in their life that needs more accessible units, the buildings are elevator buildings. The doors have the automatic openers and for the front entrances of the buildings, and then the units themselves are designed, they're adaptable so that there's backing in the bathroom, so if you need rails. But then there's also, just by code, a certain number of units are fully accessible, so that like the controls for your for the microwave and everything are reachable, and all the bathrooms are fully accessible for wheelchairs and if you need assistance.
One more thing, Will. Parking. Is there underground parking?
There is, not underground, but there's parking under the buildings.
Because I've gone down to the bakery there, and it's
Not at the existing Oliver station are you talking about Oliver or the new one?
just a lot of them, you
Yeah.
look around. The people that are going to be living there, they have cars. I mean, where do they,
At the new project, there will be, for the housing, we'll have what's called tuck under parking, so underneath the building, like the first level of the building is parking.
So there's 30 units, okay, how many parking spaces?
If there's 30 units,
Yeah.
there would be 90% of that, so there's probably between, 26 to 30 parking spaces.
Because I went to the flip side the other day, and people were very, don't park in front of my house, but it's parking was scary.
I think I'll address the parking because I'm really interested in parking because of making sure that our projects are successful. I think what's different about Oliver Station, maybe some of these first phase projects versus what we're proposing for the next phase, is the commercials use. I have an inventory. Every person who lives at Oliver Station that has a car has to register with the management office and gets a parking permit. And so out of the 145 people, less than 100 have cars. So the people who are parking in Oliver Station are people who are visiting Planet Fitness and the businesses. And what's my concern is people who are going to Flipside and the tea shop across the way are parking there, and then people are parking and getting on Max. We've been monitoring that because we're going to have to hire security to be more.
Right, because parking is just, I mean,
They were also parking there going across the street to the other apartments.
Yeah, that's what we're seeing. So even though we have because we've only been open for 9 months, we haven't been aggressively towing, but that's the next step is to start towing.
It's been the city's objective for decades to reduce the amount of automobiles and get housing on feeder lines. So bus circuits on Foster, train within a couple of blocks behind Little House, that kind of stuff. So I'm assuming that was a component of the planning process.
It was, but for Oliver Station, we built more parking than was required.
Okay.
Versus the minimum, we exceeded that. Mostly because to have successful commercial Planet Fitness, they need to have more parking. So we over-parked our space. It still feels like there's not enough, but that's because other people are using our parking lot.
Can I address that? So when you're saying you built more parking than was required, it sounds like you built more parking for the residents than was required.
Yes.
Which?
And commercial.
Oh, okay, so you had a ratio for commercial.
We exceeded the amount required.
Okay, period.
Yeah.
Okay.
And just another piece is that currently there isn't signing around the blocks for the public parking. It's all kind of
To limit it, which is
something we can consider doing in the future.
Yeah, so it's going to be public parking areas.
Yeah.
Well, there's a large lot there behind where Copper County used to be.
That's the lot that.
Yeah.
But that's limited to residents or visitors of Planet Fitness or the businesses. It has the parking lot says by permit or 1 hour parking. And so what we haven't been doing is walking around checking tires to make sure that by parking to see at different hours.
The old fancy chalk on the.
Yeah, to hire a security guard to watch that. We've been kind of using the honor system, and we've been noticing people taking advantage of our relaxed attitude.
The flow of jaywalkers across Woodstock to get to the tea house and to the bar. We needed another bar. We needed another bar in Lents, please.
But there will be parking for you in the new project.
Yeah, but there are times when it's dangerous for me going home because of all the people jumping across the street. It can be a real nightmare getting home.
And you don't even have businesses in that really.
It's horrible. Yes.
So I have maybe 3 more slides. I'll just get through those so we can just fully open it up for questions. So that's what we're considering for housing public benefits. For commercial space, we heard really loud and clear that people like the Green Lents tool libraries. We want to keep them in place. And then tenant improvement grants to support small businesses moving in, so underrepresented business owners or business owners of color. And then for public space, a strong interest in a plaza to support the Lents International Farmers Market. So we're working with Palindrome on what a permanent public easement would look like, and then also funding to design and construct the plaza, and then people to be in charge of maintenance in the long term. And then also working with the Regional Arts and Culture Council on some funding for public art for the plaza.
stuff that's further on up, all the rocks and the chicken wire. Fantastic, and I heard somebody paid for that.
And then for equitable development, which is kind of one more category of public benefits, looking at how we market the apartments, so kind of who gets the first word about when apartments are becoming available, especially affordable units, and then kind of the same thing as we're tenanting the commercial space, kind of who we're reaching out to around that. So my last slide is just so I have questions, but I can leave it on this map slide. Anyone wants to know what longer is, should we go?
Can you go back to the slide before the people? Can you send those to me?
Yeah.
Cool, that'll work.
Yeah, I'm sure.
That'll work.
That's the quality that you.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Are you proposing that the block D, E, and K, that, will that be a high-rise also?
How many stories are you thinking about?
It will be similar to all of our stations, so 5 stories.
Four,
Five
stories.
5 to 6 stories. 6 is
And
really
there'll
the
be-
maximum you can do
There will
with
be
a
off-street parking for?
Yes.
And if I were to rent a 2-bedroom unit in there, how many parking spaces would I be entitled to?
Each unit gets 1 space.
Even though husband and wives usually both have cars.
We just allow one space. And if you don't have a car, you don't get a space, so you're not giving it to a friend. We're trying to limit we are trying to limit the number of people that are parking cars and not using them.
Having some relatives and friends that live in the lower southeast Portland where this has happened, there's more than 2 cars to many of the apartments, and they're filling in the residential neighborhoods, parking bumper to bumper, and sometimes blocking driveways.
Yeah, residents can't get in and out because of the apartment dwellers. And, oh, wait a minute, somebody said apartment dwellers don't drive cars? Really, don't?
The city bureaucrats have
Yeah,
that.
yeah, no, you don't need to put
Yeah.
parking in because these people go out and take Max and the light rail. But, yeah, right.
But they ban the car to go to the forest and the beach and the other places, at least one.
So Robert, can you guys figure it out?
I don't have a pretty presentation. I'm here to answer
That's
questions.
okay, that's what I'm gonna ask. You know, you
You're
guys
pretty
figured
good,
out
Robert.
what percentage is gonna be subsidized housing?
It's really okay.
Can you repeat the question?
Have you guys figured out what percentage is gonna be subsidized housing?
So,
Let's look up block F first, maybe.
yeah, so the way it
Says
shows up there is a little
scale,
weird. Yeah, so imagine that K is up on the first line. So this
Okay.
small
The
site
corner.
adjacent to the Waddles Club, we've talked with the Portland Housing Bureau about transferring that site to the Portland Housing Bureau, and they would take it out as a part of their 2020 notice of funding available as a part of the affordable housing bond. So there would be kind of 2 projects then moving forward on this site. One that would be solely affordable, probably about, I'm not looking at my
I think the
30,
minimum, yeah, from
40
24 to 36-ish is probably what could fit. But that won't be developed at Palindrome, that'll be PHB.
And then on Block DB would still be Palindrome moving forward, and that would just be required, have to meet the inclusionary housing
Which
requirements.
is 10%. That's 60% of median income. That's required by any project in Portland that's over, it was 30 units or so you have to do.
Yeah,
How
so
many units total for both areas, what are we looking at?
Well, I don't know, I didn't do the math for adding the block F, but
Okay.
block D and E, the 92H
Right.
field is predominantly, that's about, on the low end, 220 units, on the high end, 250.
Whoa.
So there'll be about, so there'll probably be 22 to 25 affordable units within that mix.
Have they considered what that's gonna do to the neighborhood? I mean, the
Yeah,
schools alone.
it's gonna run all of us out so they can build more apartments.
Well, no, I'm just saying, that's a lot of people with no parking.
There is parking though, I don't know, maybe there's
You're
not
gonna have.
No, not.
500 spaces, there'll be
Yeah.
250 parking spaces.
But on the drawing there with blocks K and F, that's the present parking
Yes.
space for the Boys and Girls Club.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
Where will they be?
They
They
won't.
would be required to keep the parking for the Boys and Girls Club. So the Boys and Girls Club has 20 spaces designated for them. And so that would be accommodated on that site.
And is that enough, do you think, for an event there? You know, for,
That's how many spaces they have now.
And we asked them about their needs. We met, that's one of the groups that we met with. I met with them 3 times and asked them about their parking needs. And they, the last time we met with them, they were happy with their 20 units, or the 20 spaces they have.
And so that, they're not
I think
taking
one
into
of the-
consideration the other events. I know that there's a church that meets there on Sundays, and there's probably 25 or 30, maybe at least 30 cars that show up for the church services on Sunday. They're gonna have to find a new place to meet.
Well, I think it's gonna be like 92nd by the other church, the whole block is gonna be full of crowds.
You had 200 units.
That's on 92nd.
We need the apartments more than we need community events.
That's all. That's all.
Oh, Mike, I wanted to follow up on your question. In the planning process, how do you, with this large amount of density, how do you work with the Portland Public Schools or so ever to assure Lents school buildings are not that big?
Right.
And if a lot of this is going to be family housing, it's, somehow you need to be working together here
Yeah.
to accommodate.
We're not really targeting families. There will be some large units, but it's predominantly 1 and 2 bedrooms. And it's not, so the target really isn't families. I'm not saying there won't be families, because there will be, but that's not we're not targeting family housing specifically. It's more for probably singles and young families that, and to answer your question, how public schools, how we interact with the schools, when we meet with the city for the planning process, there's a meeting called a pre-application meeting. And that's when they notify the school that here's a project that's coming, so they know kind of like projections of when units will be coming into the neighborhood.
And as Robert is marketing these units, I think the schools is a great place to start. So that's a group that he can tap into. So if there's current students or current families that are looking for housing, they can find out about these on the early
Instead of
age.
adding more, just go with what's already here.
Yeah.
I want to see this picture after this is built. See how you see all the old cars? I'm thinking it's going to be solid cars.
No, Harold is going to be, Harold, you said it's going to be.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
what I'm
it's
saying.
gonna be a
It's
nightmare,
a nightmare.
absolute nightmare.
So it's like, okay, which way am I going to go now?
How do I get out of my
Already-
neighborhood?
Yeah. And I don't live in Lents, and I'm
Take-
still having.
But you still come over.
Take the bus.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
I live in Lents. You wouldn't catch my ass on the bus. I know better.
Every day to work, and we never had any problems.
Who's going to mess with him?
That's right.
I'm just saying.
I had to put up, the barn just to get in.
So do we have some more questions?
Any more questions?
It's horrible. Absolutely.
This is what it is.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure, and there will be, there'll be more meetings that, for example, during the design review process, there will be additional meetings that happen later this year.
But
when we have
that's
pictures
just
and-
design, right?
That's
That's just what it's
design.
going to look like.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then,
Not how many units or.
That's right.
Okay.
So are you guys getting much pushback from Lance Strong and the other,
Lance Strong tenants.
I would say that everyone has an opinion.
So can you tell us how many of the existing buildings, what's the occupancy in each building?
For ours, it's 100%. There's no vacant units.
Yeah, I'd say ours as well. And then
For all 5 of them?
Woody Guthrie hasn't started leasing
Right, they're not.
yet,
Yeah.
but I assume since it's, mostly affordable and
It's
workforce,
workforce.
and they'll lease up right away.
What is workforce? What range is workforce?
They define it as between 80 and 100% of median family income. So if median family income, I don't know it off the top of my head, is
Like a family of four, it's probably close to 85,000. For a family of four, 100%.
Okay.
so that anyone that would qualify.
Right.
is,
It's based on the number of people in the household. So
Right.
if there's a two-person household, it might be somewhere between
It's around
50 and
Right.
65,000. So that's workforce housing.
Okay.
And then the rents for that, like a two-bedroom at 80% of median income would probably be around $1,300 to $1,400 a month. Like all of our stations,
Right.
60% of median income, a two-bedroom, or just the rents just changed. It's $1,100 for a two-bedroom.
For a two-bedroom?
Yeah. And a one-bedroom is in the mid-800s.
What's it, you have studios
No
over there?
studios.
No studios, okay.
And no three
You
bedrooms.
gotta have 4 roommates in order to be able to pay the rent.
But that is, I think, everyone has a different definition of what
Right,
affordable
yes,
is. Because I
okay.
hear those numbers go, that's really expensive.
Yes,
And
yeah.
I don't pay that much for my house.
Yeah.
Units. Those are really expensive
Yeah.
rents. But for Portland, well, why
Yeah,
they still aren't considered
exactly.
affordable?
Yeah.
The truth is, new buildings are always going to be more expensive if they want to be affordable. Yeah.
That's the thing that's amazing to me is that the cost to build a unit will be more than $350,000 for a rental unit. You can still buy homes in Lents for
Yeah.
that price.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's
It's
very expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know the ones that were not your building, all of the other one. The other is the one that's it's all the barn. I think there were 200,000 units or something. Less common.
You do all upgrades in yours?
Oh, they look very nice.
I wouldn't say upgrades, but they're
They look
nice.
very
They're
nice.
new.
Yeah, they
There's
look very
nothing
nice.
like super fancy.
Yeah,
Like, there's not even
nice.
washers and dryers, or there's no washers and dryers in the
No,
units,
they're
for
not.
example.
Yeah, but they had stainless steel roof ridges and that kind of stuff. At least Lance Common did.
Yeah.
Well, I know that's upgraded. That's what they're putting in now.
I know, people like to clean appliances. Those fingerprints. My last one was, it's white now. I've been there, did the burnt orange road too. Did the
I think that's
auto
stuff
one.
you're still building. It's right behind the
Did
main
the
street.
bathroom.
Behind the fire station, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what he got.
Oh, been there, done that.
Hey guys, any more questions for Allison or Robert? Okay, we'll turn it over to Scott.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I got it.
Grab some food. Help yourself to some food.
My name is Scott. I'm with Peabody. I have some handouts. I'm sorry for the large format. I don't know what my computer and printer were doing, but it's very large and readable. I will need some people to share. I only brought 10 copies. There are 3 pages, yes. Different formats of information. Got 2 more.
Oh, I do too.
I should.
It's hard work. This is adjustable, it's called flower. It was. He was. It's just.
Quiet down, quiet down.
Thank you, Scott.
Take control.
I've recognized this scrutiny. Firm hand. The data's in, this is 3 pages. These ones are color coded to the speed and number of vehicles per day, depending on which sheet you're looking at. The color code is just for distinguishing one street from another. It doesn't have a specific value other than that speed range. So the speed and volume, the speed one does have a tie to safety. Speeds over 30 miles per hour are generally fatal if you're a pedestrian struck at that speed. So our goals on, we'll call the local streets, like 105th or Henderson, would be in the 17 to 23 range. And the higher speed we'd like to achieve, the more things we need to do on the street to make it safer for people to walk or bike. And this other graph, or this other sheet, is the historical data for Flavel and Mount Scott that the city's collected over time. Gives you an idea of how things have changed over the years, increasing generally, a few dips every now and then. The economic downturn had a dip in traffic. New data has been ordered for Mount Scott Boulevard, but that takes 2 or 3 months to get because of the current backlog and the amount of staff who have to collect data. 2 questions I was asked to address, Shar, were 92nd Avenue, when's it going to get fixed? Bad news, that's up to the developer.
Well, I was just gonna say, he just left. He's got the answer.
UEB, who's building the development, is the one who took out the permit to do all the sidewalk work, and then they're responsible for repairing the roads after they've finished their work. And the way buildings go, as you notice, they tear up the sidewalks, they build their building, and then after they're done with their building, almost completely, then they go back and they finish up the sidewalks. And after they do the sidewalks, then they do the street. So I have not heard back from the developer's contact about their schedule yet. But when I do, I will forward that to Shar so we can pass that on.
How long do they have to make those repairs? I mean, you don't have any?
I've seen projects not finally fix their roads till 3 to 6 months after their buildings are open. Which occupied?
Yeah.
He just said 9 months.
I'll check with the developer to see what his schedule is. It's not something that the city staff or crews usually do. It's usually something they have to contract work for. So I don't know what the status is. Last time I drove by there, I thought they were still finishing up. I can certainly check on it again.
There's been no work on that street for 6 to 8 months.
Well, they were working on sidewalks, though.
Okay.
A couple of months ago.
Yeah, if they haven't finished the sidewalks, they probably don't want to redo their streets until all the concrete trucks are out of there. So.
What options do we have if our
I
front
haven't
end of
seen
our
any
car
sidewalk
is
construction going on over
thrown out of alignment? Because there's a cut
sidewalk.
right across.
You can certainly file a claim with the city, and the city will go after the contractor for anything that is identified as their responsibility.
All right, we'll all do that.
That's gonna work just about as well as my house has been flooded by your water main and.
Well, so,
That didn't work, did it?
And the other question I was asked was about traffic on Mount Scott. And I think that was in conjunction with the current construction on Foster.
Yes.
But as I said, I won't be able to get data for another couple months.
Well, now I noticed they did cut down traffic speed on 112.
Yes, that's part of our ongoing Safe Systems Vision Zero effort.
That's
Look at all the
what
streets in
on
the
Mount
city.
Scott.
I don't know why it's not, I'm not sure if it's on the list yet, but eventually the goal is that none of the streets in the city of Portland that don't have curb and sidewalk and separate space for bikes will be higher than posted 30 miles per hour, because those are like considered the minimum to go above 30 miles per hour.
Is there any plans to put any sidewalks on Mount Scott, because it goes and then it stops? And I've seen a family with one got a baby carriage and they got a dog and so forth.
Right.
When you come around that curve,
Right.
around 101, I think.
101, yeah.
It's pretty scary.
Yeah, it is. And we've had people drive their cars off the road there and die. So.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Mount Scott is a neighborhood collector street. As streets go in the city, it doesn't have a lot of crashes on it. And the city's focus right now is called Vision Zero, and that's to look at the corridors that have the most number of crashes, the most number of people dying, and to focus almost all of our energy on getting those worst case streets in the city fixed. A street like Mount Scott usually is developed as adjacent properties are redeveloped, like the development that's gone on around Woodstock and 92nd. The developer, when they rebuild, they have to bring everything next to the street up to standard. And so those segments that have sidewalk is because the development that was built at the time it was developed were required to build those sidewalks. The city doesn't have a dedicated fund at this time to go in and just do sidewalks anywhere. As I said, the Fixing Our Street money, which everybody approved, and thank you for that, has specific projects and targets in mind. For instance, sidewalks on 174th, 162nd Avenue. Sidewalks along two sides of the street cost about $1 million a mile. So, and that's on a flat street. If you can start getting into curves where you have to dig out or build retaining walls because of the way things slope off. Drainage is a whole doubling of cost because you trap water, then you have to do something with it. And if you're on a hillside, you really don't want to soak it into the ground like if you're on flat. And so that means you have to put it in a pipe, which means you have to collect it and take it somewhere or pump it to a treatment station. So it gets very expensive very fast when you're not treating water right where it lands, which is our preference. So I'm not sure how much Foster work has affected traffic moving over to Flavel or other streets to try to come up Mount Scott. But I would expect that some of it has shifted, particularly during construction. And we really won't have a good idea of the total effects of the Foster change until after everything is up and running again.
They're still going to get a confusion.
Oh, yeah, I've been through there a few times, and
Just in the last week.
contractors moving stuff
Yeah.
around every day.
And ghost striping.
Yeah.
Where people are like, is it a stripe?
And if they grind it up, it still looks like it's
Yeah,
there.
it still looks like it's straight, yeah.
Yeah, the chaos of construction.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Scott, I live on Mount Scott,
Mhm.
Boulevard and 105th.
Mhm.
And in a situation over the last 5 years where the traffic probably has, or 4 or 5 years, it's
Mhm.
probably doubled. And I got so frustrated, I just got out there with my counter.
Right.
And at that intersection, there's an average of 420 cars an hour.
Mhm.
And that's only half of the traffic that's coming off of 112 from all of the development up there.
Right.
I know there's nothing we're going to be able to do to stop development, but those cars are coming down the hill at 50 and 60 miles an hour.
Yeah, those are some
There
high
have been 3
speeds.
people killed on Mount Scott Boulevard over the last 5 years.
Yeah.
There have been homes, my own, where a car tried to make a pass a car and ended up in my yard and took out a brick retaining wall.
Right.
And my other neighbors have had their hedge taken out by a car.
Mhm.
A car flew off the curbs and landed on the roof of a bedroom up there. You guys have all of that information and aware of all that?
This is a live
We
radio,
do
right?
have lots of information. I didn't bring my crash map, I forgot to print that one out, but we have all the data for the crashes. I will send it forward with the other attachments.
That's
And
okay, I just need
we
to
have
know
all that
about
kind
it
of
because-
information. As long as it's reported to Department of Motor Vehicles, we will have received it. Though there is a year or two time lag from when they get it and when they give it to us.
Yeah.
Are they counting cars yet? You know, when you have that little strip, you know?
The collectors have been ordered. The collection has been ordered. When they show up out there, you'll know before I do because they schedule it when they can schedule it.
The city used to have available, and they still do, the radar vans.
The
They
city,
can be
the
stationed.
Portland Police Bureau has radar vans, one or two of them. You can call 823 SAFE
Yeah.
and request that kind of thing. They need a place to be able to park on the side of the road to do
When I
it.
called a year ago,
Yeah.
it was a year's wait. There were that many people in advance.
Yeah, I
Is that
don't
true?
know that we keep track of their decision of whether or not to deploy the van. I know they're severely understaffed right now. They didn't plan for their retirements, and they have a hard time getting people to join the police force. So right now, the traffic control section has maybe only had ever 12 officers for the entire city, and that's for 3 shifts. So at any one time, there's only 4 or 5 traffic officers for the entire city. Everyone else is working crimes and other type of safety calls. So their staff has always been very limited, and so how they choose to deploy, I'm not sure, though my understanding, especially with the recent 10 fatals in April, that Chief Outlaw has been identifying, focusing more, again, on the high crash routes and the high crash corridors, the 82nd Avenues, the divisions, the Fosters, things like that.
So you're gonna make Division a pedestrian mall?
Division?
Yeah,
I don't know.
it's looking like it.
West of where?
East of 82nd and west of 182nd.
I know they're gonna take one of the lanes out.
Yeah, they're doing it on 162nd too.
Right, so I think that's as part of the preparation for the TriMet
So we're getting
corridor
there.
thing. So
We only have 2 more lanes to go, and it's just a pedestrian mall. And then people can cross, and they don't need the crosswalks that they don't use now.
well, if you remember, I don't know if you remember, Halsey used to be 4 lanes.
Yeah,
And now it's down to 2 lanes.
and it's still moving.
The crowd.
And so does my son in the morning. It's interesting as I look at this page. So from 1995 on Mount Scott Boulevard, the posted speed was 30.
That's what it says. I don't know if I believe it, but that's what it said. It was 30, but it's been raised.
And we were more compliant back then because we were driving between 40 and 42 miles an hour. Posted speed today is 35,
Right.
and we've got 2,300 people going 52 miles an hour.
You have the 85th percentile is 52.
Okay.
You have 15% of 2,300 going faster.
Yeah, okay, you made my point.
Right. And I don't know why it's still 35. It should be on the list for reduction.
Well, see, I
And
heard-
my response to that is, who cares?
Well, if you just gave the argument of why care, because if everyone agrees they're not going to get a ticket until they go 11 over the posted, and we lower the speed limit by 5 miles per hour, we'll lower their speed by 5 miles per
But for
hour.
the fun of the debate, you just told me I don't have any traffic cops up there.
That's right.
That's why they're going 11 over.
That's why they're going 20 over.
Literally in front of my home is the speed limit sign.
Right.
The one and only. It says 35 miles an hour.
Right.
And you can watch them hit the gas right in that sign up the hill. Straight away.
That's a
And
nice
I
straightaway.
have a couple of other problems that I'm seeing, and I'm sure you've heard these before. But the noise, 30% of those are big, heavy trucks going up the hill. Another are
Construction
fast little
work,
cars that
Oh, yeah.
are
Yeah.
driving up there
Yeah.
at 70, 80, 90, 100 miles an hour.
Did you see the woman going down 105th last week? Our neighbor Jason saw her. Her windshield was totally smashed in. He couldn't even figure out how she could see. She was on like 60.
Oh, isn't it parked now on 92nd? There.
Is it?
Yeah.
Ah,
Did you hear that Cadillac spin his tires the other day?
I didn't. I wasn't told.
What can we do to at least get the speed limit down?
Well, like I said, we're going over the entire city. We've already reduced speed limits on about 100 miles of city streets. And that's part of our new process that we've developed with ODOT, because ODOT decides all the speed limits in all the state. And so if it's not a statutory speed, like a residential district at 25, then it has to be a speed order that ODOT decrees. And we developed within about a year ago a new process, a streamlined process, where we do a one-page review and analysis and a request. And as long as the people on the street aren't driving already too fast, they'll usually agree to us by dropping speeds by in 5-mile-an-hour increments. The trick with ODOT is they heavily rely on that 85th percentile number, which is on a sheet I gave you. And by law, they can't reduce the posted speed order more than 10 miles under the 85th percentile law. It's actually written in state law, presumption of injuries. And so if they can't do it, and they tell us no, we have to go through another process with this, what's called the State Speed Control Board. And we're about 95% successful in our requests. When we get to the State Speed Control Board, it drops down to about 10 or 15% because the Speed Control Board has about 5 people on it, 1 person from ODOT, a person from the governor's office, and other representatives that are police officer, and then 2 people from different jurisdictions. And at least 3 of those people think that drivers should be able to go as fast as they feel comfortable driving, which makes it very difficult for cities like Portland, who have a different point of view, to get speeds different than how fast people are driving. Most of the time, our requests are within that 10-mile-an-hour range. ODOT doesn't have to say no. They can say yes and allow us to do what we do. Like I said, 100 miles of our streets have already been changed, so that's in the last year or 2.
So what are they doing with Foster? Because originally, when I saw the original streetscape, they were gonna do some kind of bump outs and allow the bikes, I thought, to drive on the far side so they weren't getting hit.
I've not seen it recently, but that is a standard new tool. It's been done in other places where they put an island out in where the parking lane is.
There's no room on Foster.
They're taking the lane. So it used to be 4 lanes. Now it's going to turn into 3 lanes, and the leftover space will be given to cyclists. The original design, I think, was next to the curb, but I think the current design is a standard bike lane next to the parked cars.
Yeah, okay.
So, and that 3-lane section means that the center turn lane at some streets can have more of the islands that are currently on Foster. I did a couple of islands that are on Foster already, and if you're out there when it was a 4-lane section, then you had to take away the parking and push the lanes out, like at 78th, 65th. Those are islands that I designed before when it was a 4-lane section. So the thing with refuge islands is that they're safer for pedestrians because they only have to cross one half of the road, but then they take up a lot of more parking along the side of the road, which doesn't help the commercial interests. So it's a balancing act.
How can we get the semis to slow down on Southeast 100 to go into West Rock facility?
I'm not
If they're
sure.
on 100, I mean,
Get rid of Russell.
100th or
Southeast 100th.
North of Foster? North of Foster?
And Southeast.
It's east.
It's south of Foster.
South of Foster, where the buffered bike lanes are already there on the road.
No, you know where West Rock is on Southeast 100?
I don't think
I'm not exactly sure.
Foster
Yeah.
anyway, it's exactly the center, but
The
there's-
light is on
101st, right?
Yeah, so between
So
101st and Woodstock Court is West Rock, they take out the whole block.
Mhm.
Well, then Southeast 100 is, this half is residential, this half is industrial, whatever. But they just barrel up that street, because they come
Right.
from 101st, they go south off of Foster onto 101st, on 101st, and then they go west on Southeast 100th. And then they go north on Southeast Woodstock Court to turn into the facility.
I think it's right in this area, right? What you're talking about? Because this is
This is
Foster.
Foster.
That's right in this area, isn't it? Where you get to the floodplain?
Oh, yeah, it's got
Yeah, yeah, it's right up here. It's right up here, Scott. It's in this little triangle.
Right.
What you're talking
West of
about.
where 101st
Right
joins
here.
the,
See,
joins
they
the trail.
come in on Foster on 101st south.
Well, they come in on 101st, and then they have to go up Duke, and then they have to go up 100 to go around to get into the facility.
And then they have to turn right on Woodstock Court to get into the facility.
Yeah.
So they have to go on 3 streets, but they barrel up 100.
I know, that's why we stopped cleaning on Thursday. We were like,
They
we
just
get
run
run over.
on Southeast 101st and would stop for
Right.
it on Southeast 100.
There's signage there, isn't there?
I don't know, I don't remember seeing any.
Maybe that's what you need, is some signage.
Because-
It's a neighborhood.
Because the speed limit signs work so well.
Yeah,
But they, at least you could, you know.
We have a saying, if signs worked, you wouldn't need traffic jams.
Well, that's true.
But West Rock has the ability, if they're aware of a driver committing an offense,
Right,
providing it's one of their drivers as opposed to an
Right.
IC that's just hauling a hazardous,
Right.
a hazmat load that he didn't know he was getting. And apparently, from what they're telling us, they are writing them up and giving them consequences.
We've received these kind of concerns before, and generally, what I understand the requester has been told is they need to document the vehicle and the time of day, and if they can, the owner of the vehicle, the company or whatever. And with sufficient information and data, the city can contact them about their behavior. Alternately, if you're as a group are doing that recording, you could contact them directly as well to discuss your concerns. I'll go ahead and order some data along the street to see how fast the general traffic is going. And I can review the signs in the area too. If you have any suggestions about signs you might think would be appropriate, I can see if we even have such a sign in inventory. Now, I can tell you the no truck sign doesn't apply to a truck making a local delivery.
Yeah,
So.
they have to be allowed to do it, or
Right.
you don't get your product. West Rock has been, I think that if we could come up with a way, besides you having to watch your camera all day long, they are willing to haul in the drivers and give them consequences.
Well, yeah,
The
but
problem
you
that
know,
they're having is if it's an IC, which is an independent contractor, who owns their own truck and is getting their own loads, they don't have any leverage.
Right.
Because an IC will say, well, hell, I just won't call you, I won't haul your crap anymore. Fine, go away. But the ones that they have control over, they seem to be willing, and maybe, we didn't talk about this at the last meeting with West Rock. It didn't come up about them speeding.
I asked Wayne.
Sure, Renee's covered it.
About,
Well, yeah.
I asked Wayne about the truck drivers that blow by on Woodstock and on Woodstock Court, blow by the no truck signs. And I asked Wayne, I says, can you not? Because I can send them timed pictures off my camera because it points right to West Rock.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, the no truck signs don't hold for them.
No,
Because
they're
they're
getting there, they're getting there, I have to admit, they are getting there, but there's some rebellious truck drivers, and I'm not gonna talk to them because I've had run-ins with them, and I don't need any retaliation. But I did talk to Wayne the other day, and I said, but now, I've sent you pictures of this particular guy before. I says, can you not tell him that if he doesn't quit blowing the no truck stop signs on the streets, that you're not gonna take his load? He says, I did just that. I already did it. He says, I just did it. Because
There, an alternate that I have seen from time to time, particularly with developments or other things you may have heard of, is a good neighbor agreement. And that's where a neighborhood association approaches a specific company or developer, or it could be like a Safeway or other stores that have many trucks going in and out, and discusses with them how they can be better neighbors in the neighborhood.
We've got Metro working on that.
yeah.
Metro's involved now.
I was
The
35 years.
We actually do have something called a truck trap in Portland. I don't know if anybody ever been out on Kurtz Road.
A what?
Kurtz Road, which is if you're out on Marine Drive and there's this nice little country road that heads south, and if you get to the end of it and turn right and head out towards Vancouver Way,
Oh, yeah.
you have to go around that funny diamond-shaped island.
Yeah.
That's our truck trap. Truck can't get around that. They have to drive over it in 12-inch curves. Kind of hard for them to do. We don't have money for that, but there are physical objects that cars can get around that trucks cannot, which might be an ultimate solution in the future. I don't know what the city's capacity is for private funding and such things like that, but it might be a future potential option if the offending company continues to offend. Alternatively, we have had objects funded by the companies as part of their good neighbor agreement. We've had Whole Foods build speed bumps. We've had Fred Meyer fund diverters.
So you still allow those? Because I understood you didn't allow speed bumps anymore.
Oh no, we allow speed bumps. We're using them all over the city.
Okay.
We just don't have a program for local residents anymore. We have to have a specific funded project fixing our streets through safe routes or any greenways or funding traffic calming.
So if we could get speed bumps on Southeast Woodstock Court and Southeast Woodstock where there are no truck signs posted, would that eliminate them wanting to go down those streets?
Probably.
Not if it's the most convenient way for them to get there.
Well,
It's
no,
just
they have to learn.
they'd have to slow down, and I would be concerned about putting speed bumps on a place you know trucks are going to be driving, because trucks and buses have a tendency to vibrate the roads a little more than cars do. And certainly the people who live next to them will be able to feel that extra jolting inside their house. It won't cause damage, but it will be more noticeable with the truck going over a bump. So I think there are better tools to prevent trucks from getting where they want to go, truck drivers.
One of the things we're seeing on Mount Scott Boulevard, it's everywhere, everybody's impatient and in a hurry. That's double stripe down the middle, which I think means no passing.
No passing.
You're
correct.
This is a recent phenomenon, I would say within the last 6 to 9 months. Those are being ignored like there's no tomorrow.
Right.
And is there anything like a sign, I don't have a lot of faith in a sign that says no parking,
No passing.
no passing between 101st and 112th?
We have a sign that reminds people that the fine for violating the center line is a $260 fine. It's not a common sign. I'm not sure if it's kept in inventory on a regular basis. So I don't know how easily available it is.
That's what's scary to me. We started the conversation with, there are young families getting off of the bus, having to walk across the street. There's a 1-2 group homes in the area. There's a large residential treatment center down the hill. And there are a couple of gentlemen that are in wheelchairs that are always out and around. And this lady's always out and around.
I am. I told David that's how I'm gonna die. Walking that road.
It's just, I don't know what we can do, but we just.
I agree,
It's so-
Mount Scott is scary.
Portland is scary.
Yeah,
We
we
were
were
driving in Portland.
The other thing is, I don't know how you coordinate with the noise control, but when they hit the gas down there, it's basically it's noisier than something taking off at the Portland airport. It really is.
Yeah, I'm not sure we can involve the nuisance noise control, because that generally applies only from like 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. in the morning. So I'm not sure there's, and that usually they only are invoked when there's a specific construction activity that might cause noise or cause noise at an unusual time of day. So like if somebody's having a crazy party, you can call out the enforcement officers and they'll do a recording and that sort of thing and issue citations. But for just general traffic noise, I don't think they have any mechanism to enforce.
Can I go back to the enforcement issue again? And you brought up the thing about the diamond there near Vancouver Way. We also have the photo radar at the golf club right there on Marine Drive.
Oh, yes.
And we have photo radar.
Enforcement, yes.
Yeah, 104th, and we have photo radar at about 138.
Yes.
Photo radar at 149th on Division. Are these experiments?
Those are high crash corridors.
Okay. How much does a photo radar pole cost?
$35,000 per camera installation, and state law requires them to be on the top 2% of our crash corridors.
Okay.
And Mount Scott's not anywhere near.
Not anywhere near that, no, sorry.
Maybe more people will die. Someone gonna take one for the team?
What do you want to take, Cindy?
It's just a number.
If you have any questions or concerns about traffic safety, traffic signs, you think something needs to be changed, you think there's a problem with a particular intersection, I was the engineer who picked up the service request for 112th and Flavel, where we added the additional signing to warn people that, yes, the people on 112th do not stop. Those kinds of things are requests where you see a concern that can be fixed by a sign or something that needs maintenance. 823 SAFE is the general number to call for any type of those concerns, as well as any enforcement requests. We're the intake for the police bureau.
Again, with the radar ban, that's through the police bureau.
That's through the police bureau. Call 823 SAFE and they can make the request.
So when a semi parks on the other side of the street facing the opposite direction, so he can get out and one of those doors, like it says in the administrative rules, boys, you're not supposed to do.
Right. You can call 823 SAFE.
And guess what? They're gone by the time anybody gets there.
Right. Otherwise, there is a parking number that goes directly to phone message for the parking enforcement.
Yeah, we got that.
And if you know that if they're there on a regular basis at a particular time of day, you can call parking enforcement and they can arrange for someone to be in the area in that general time. The caveat is that because there's few of them and it's a bit far out to go, once they come out to a service call, they're going to look for more things to enforce. So if you call, that's right, if you call them out for a truck parked the wrong way and your car is blocking your own driveway, you could also receive a citation.
That'll never happen.
So,
Forewarned,
yes.
But the reason it sticks in my craw is because we had a van, my husband had a van, and he would park it in front of our house, but facing the wrong direction.
And he parked it too far from the curb. That's the official thing. He parked too far from the curb because on a two-way street, it's measured from the right side of your car, not the left side.
Well, but yet somebody had to park.
I got one of those tickets once too. I went to court and said, why did I get a ticket? I was right next to the curb.
But the reason he did that is because it took 2 less nitros to get in the house.
Oh, wow.
So he gets a ticket.
Right.
Well, the next week, we're having a policeman's call, do you want to donate? Not the right time to call him.
You're right, I already did.
Should we just pop the nitro, you know?
Right.
And so this kind of stuff sticks in my craw. It's gone now, but this kind of stuff sticks in my craw when you see a semi parked blocking 2 driveways and 2 mailboxes on the wrong side of the street, facing the wrong direction, but we don't do on public streets. Nobody can do anything about it.
Right.
So I'm complaining for nothing again.
You are Renee.
You can take a photo. We can find out who it belongs to.
I know, I do a lot of that.
We have the ability to look up license plates.
But the thing is when they get out, they take pictures of the license plates. And my camera, if your face is what I thought, doesn't take the license plates. Always obscure.
I've taken pictures of people parked a long way. Since
Walk out with
since
your
I'm now
phone
delayed.
and take a picture.
No, I've done that before.
They're not gonna come burn your house down.
You don't know that. That might be doing me a favor.
Oh, wait a minute, I thought you were just getting a new kitchen.
Bathroom. Oh, I can count that. Anyway, but it's just, you know, I mean, it's getting better. Like 35 years later, it's starting to get better. Thank you, Metro.
She's off the subject totally.
I am so sorry.
So, does anyone have any more questions?
I've got one.
Yes.
This,
You guys ask real complicated questions. Mine's very simple, yes or no. Is the city still using substandard paving material?
Oh, yeah.
Not to my knowledge.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Not his knowledge. So I don't know.
They do.
Well, yeah, because they filled the potholes on Mount Scott, they last about 6 months.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, they probably use cold mix.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
They do.
Or you can't fix the charge of, you can't patch a hole and expect it to stay. It's not who's to charge.
Well, the cold mix is the best.
Yeah.
Right.
But you can't.
You have to go all the way down to the base, below the pavement.
West Rock does
And
not
take
do
it
that.
up.
Versus Cherry.
And, yeah, many people wonder why we resurface or fix that street and leave other streets alone. And, I had a graph. The lifespan of a road goes like this and it starts dropping off. If we catch it up here, we can keep that line sort of level a lot longer. And so we can spend our money up here to keep things going. But if we spend our money down here, it just stays there and keeps going down further.
Oh,
so we sometimes let roads go because they need more than just a patch or a chip seal. They need a full rebuild. And so we delayed them at 2 or 3 or 5 years so we can get the full deal in there and go back and completely rebuild. Similar to what just happened out on Southeast 50th.
So you go down to the substrate, do you repack it?
Hawthorne to Division, tear it all down, take out all the rock and the rail
And the rail.
and so and then you have to, when we do any type of resurfacing that goes down more than 2 inches, we also have to make sure any curb ramps are all up to current standards and all those sorts of things. So if your street doesn't have curbs or curb ramps, that doesn't trigger us putting them in, but any of them that are not currently in standard have to be torn out and rebuilt under our current agreement. So I don't know where Mount Scott might be on that list, but I can check for that.
Could you put it on the list?
I'm sorry, I do not control that list.
Kat, how many of the streets in southeast Portland are the city's responsibility versus the state's responsibility? 82nd, for example, is that yours?
82nd is the state's from curb to curb, and this is a very tricky area. Certainly all the freeways are theirs. Powell, I believe, is still theirs,
Yeah.
but I think it's theirs from property line to property line. The only exceptions would be pedestrian facilities. Normally, like on 82nd Avenue, we built those islands and marked those crosswalks, or not marked those crosswalks, sorry. We marked the ones we could mark, like the mid-block one at the mall north of Halsey. But the city is responsible for the pedestrian crossings and maintaining those markings and signs.
So I thought at some point the state was going to give 82nd to the city.
They would love to give it to the city. The city won't take it unless
Okay,
it comes
good.
with a nice
Maintenance.
little bit of change
Maintenance,
to
okay.
make sure that it's up to
Okay,
snuff. So
okay.
so yeah, we'll take it. But if I was city engineer, I would take it without strings attached because I agree if we have more control over it, we can do more with it. But the current policy is that unless it receives funding for upgrades as part of the handoff, and I think that's the thing with Powell, is that they're going to fund the reconstruction, and then once they do that, they will transfer jurisdiction to the city. That's why we've been so involved in trying to get what we want built instead of what they want built.
You're going to town from 122nd to 136th every day.
Yeah.
So last summer, 112 concrete trucks dumped concrete going up the hill,
Yeah,
and it's still there.
And you know who did it?
it's a speed bump.
And then
Yeah, that's pretty cool, yeah.
Right.
That would be an 823 safe maintenance request to describe what occurred and have someone from maintenance come out and take a look at it So if it's not too bad, they could just
Somewhere else.
bring out a scraper or a backhoe and scrape it off, but it just depends on how bad it's stuck.
It seems like it's stuck.
It's pretty stuck pretty
Is
well.
it slowing down traffic? Maybe you need another truck to
Yeah, that's where they speed up, is after they go to the Lents.
Right over that bump, yeah, where I do it.
Right, that's on the right.
Actually, I watch the downhill traffic hit it at the bottom as I drive up the roadside.
Yeah.
I hear the bridge is open now over Johnson Creek.
Over Leach.
Leach, yeah, Leach Mechanical, there was cutting yesterday.
Yeah, and the salmon current,
That'll help a few things, help flow.
it helps a lot.
I guess those people at Fulville are gonna have all the traffic.
Okay, well, thank you, Scott.
You're welcome.
Okay, one last chance. Anyone have anything else they want to share with the group?
Alison, anything new?
Okay, we have consensus. The meeting's adjourned. Thank you.